Hello friends, I'm here in Winterport, Maine at Bald Hill Cemetery. And this cemetery was likely in the middle of the woods when it was first established. Right now you can see it's between this intersection of the main road and this side road. And there's very little parking. You can kind of see where I parked right there on the edge, but there's not great parking. And then it goes up this little hill. It's actually called Bald Hill Cemetery. So a quick walk around this one. It does date back to at least the 1830s. And there's some more modern burials here right up to the 1970s. So it's a strange kind of mix of the early 1800s type graves. There's one that I can see in this whole cemetery. And then you have the modern ones up through the 1970s. But here's a few. Reuben and Stubbs, who died August 27th, 1878, age 42 years, 10 months. There's his wife, Hannah, who actually died November 3rd of 1900, 64 years, 4 months, and a day. So you could see this style of kind of soapstone, I don't know if that's the right word, but it comes to mind, was becoming more popular. It does stand out. It tends to get less fungal growth on it and lasts a long time. I mean, these have been here well over 100 years at this point, and they look almost as fresh as the day they were put in. You can see there's been some repairs, some epoxy and whatnot near the bottom, but still really good shape. And you have a few footstones here, so we know those are before 1850. Possibly. I mean, they're white, so they could be a little bit later, I suppose, if they were hanging on to that old style. But here you have an infant, Georgia H., died August 26, 1871, age 4 months, 20 days, gone but not forgotten. Here you have the classic child stone. It says Ida Isadora, daughter of Granville H. and Sarah Snow, died August 3rd, 1862, age 5 years, 5 months. You've got the classic lamb there, which was very common on children's graves of the era, the little lamb to symbolize childhood and a child fallen. Continuing that, we have the late 1800s graves here. Again, these were more becoming popular. You do have the footstones, so, you know, the gray slate footstones were typical in 1850 and before, and then they kind of went more toward these white ones, but we can see they still sometimes had the tradition of the footstone, so the body would be buried between the footstone and the headstone. This is the Downs family. Susan, wife of Daniel Downs, Elvira, daughter of Daniel and Susan, and then Nathaniel, who likely was their son. I would assume the father is probably buried right here. Let's see. Actually, the footstone says AD, and the father was Daniel, so maybe it's another son or daughter buried there, but this headstone is long gone, and then we have the footstone. There's the rest of the family with the headstones and the footstones, so at least this is there with the initials. Walking back a little bit, you have the Lowry family. Again, late 1800s. You have Rebecca, wife of John Lowry, died August 3rd of 1890. October 3rd, rather. And then there's John, born July 7, 1807, died October 25th, 1894. His first wife, Lucinda, born January 18, 1809, died September 24th, 1838. So she lived a pretty short life. She passed, and then John remarried Rebecca. This is the old style of graves that we see before 1850. So Benjamin Lowry died December 30th, 1839, age 75 years, 6 months. This frame shall molder in the ground until the last loud trump shall sound. The body then shall leave the clay to spend with Christ the eternal day. So, uplifting message from 186 years ago. Susanna followed him not soon thereafter. About 12 years later, Susanna passed away, 2 days before Christmas of 1851. We continue back and we see a mixture of the more modern graves and the old ones. You have this footstone kind of all by itself again. It says PB for initials. You have an infant here, Lewis, son of Joshua and Phoebe Baker. He died October 2nd of 1841. He was 1 year and 1 month old. And his sister right next to him, you got Mary M., also daughter of Joshua and Phoebe Baker. Died April 4 of 1852, 9 years, 1 month and 1 day. There's their parents. Joshua, born May 25, 1802, died August 13, 1885. Phoebe, the wife, she was born April 10, 1805, December 18, 1869 was her date of death, and wife of Joshua Baker. About then, the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, give or take, they were starting to put both the dates of birth and dates of death on there, whereas before it would say, like their son here, 1 year and 1 month. So you'd have to count back rather than actually see the date of birth. And then you have probably some more of their children. You have Lewis mentioned again, so he's on the family obelisk, and then of course his own grave. And it says August 24, 1841 into October 2nd, 1840 to 1841. And then you have Mary, who also had the headstone, if you remember correctly, March 4, 1844 to April 14th, 1852. You have Elmira, which I didn't see a stone for Elmira. And it says October 28th, 1842 to April 20th, 1855. So their children, as was the trend back there, probably succumbed to disease and died young, unfortunately. Here you have another sad one, Charles L. Hurd, died April 7, 1887. He was 35 years and 3 months, and his child is also memorialized here, infant child of Charles and Flora J. Hurd. So Flora is not mentioned except as the mother of the infant child and the wife of Charles. So I'm thinking that Flora must have either, yeah, she likely would have died after Charles. Otherwise, if she died when the infant died, she'd be on here as well. So very likely she outlived Charles, possibly remarried as well if it was the late 1800s like that. So at least, you know, both the infant and father are mentioned here. We go back, and this grave, I have walked this before and recorded what I found on Find a Grave, so if it was readable at the time, it's on Find a Grave, but you can see some of these stones are in extremely rough shape at this point. These stones are from the early 1900s. You can tell they were getting a little bit thicker back then, so they'd last longer. And you have this sort of tablet shaped ones, which kind of look like the Ten Commandments, probably fashioned after the Bible. So very thick. It's good. My hand isn't small, so you can see it's about the width of my hand. This is Marcella. I do remember categorizing this on Find a Grave last year or the year before, but you can tell it's broken. There's her footstone out of the ground. So there is quite a bit of space here, a good probably 7 feet between the back stones and the woods. Very compact little cemetery, but there's property all around it, but they've kept the integrity of the cemetery. here you also have the late 1800s, early 1900s. These ground stones were becoming popular. They do tend to grow a lot of moss being right next to the ground, but you can see they don't really crack, so they do hold up a long time. Some more older burials. There's two sides to this cemetery. I just walked one. Here's the other one. I guess in reality, really three sides, but a lot of these are very broken. I can see that death was 1864, 1873. Classic footstones. This person, Captain James Downs, was actually born, looks like 1793, lived to 1881. So long lifespan. His wife, Chloe, was born February 25th, 1800. She died 1841. So she was born about 7 years after her husband, but she died about 40 years before him. Here we have a little fenced-in plot. You can see some of the sides have fallen down, but it's still pretty well kept up. I mean, obviously the message here was don't walk among the graves, right? You can tell that's a child because the footstone's so close to the headstone. A couple children, actually. Marston Hazelton died 1881, age 79 years. Large family obelisk, the Baker family, Isaiah Baker and his wife Harriet. It says father, so that would be Isaiah. There's Isaiah's head and footstone. And there's his wife Harriet. Looks like in this case Harriet's footstone is gone. I would have to think that she had one at one point in time because everybody else here does. And this is likely their children. So you have Mary, Elmira. Can't read that one. And this is Albert Baker and his wife. Here's an old school name for you. Parthenia Hurd. So the Baker family plot right in here. There's Phoebe Atwood. Another kind of fence, a different kind of fence. Instead of the wrought iron in back of us, we have sort of these pillars which mark the boundaries of this family. There's another very old name you don't hear anymore, Azube, wife of Elisha Delano, or Delano rather, I should say. Sarah Y, wife of Samuel H. Barber. And sometimes, just to save space and money, they would actually have more than one child mentioned on a stone. So here you have Elizabeth, died July 1st, 1825. Probably the oldest burial I've seen so far here. Not a blemish on it. Age 3 weeks. William died August 1st, 1822. There, he just beat his sister's record for oldest grave so far. Age 5 months. Children of Paul D. and Lucy Delano. Right there, kind of a cryptic looking moth exoskeleton, it looks like, right on the edge. There's Henry, son of Paul D. and Mariah E. Delano. So Paul must have been married more than once to Lucy and Mariah. But young Henry J. here died March 1st, 1850, age 6 years, 2 months. A lot of infant or young children deaths. Helen, daughter of Paul D. and Mariah Delano, died January 9, 1850, age 3 years, 10 months. Another son, John D. of Paul D. and Mariah Delano, died December 2nd, 1849, He made it to 20 years, 4 months. There's Paul's wife, Lucy, died July 23rd, 1828, age 27. So Lucy would have had to be his first wife because the other children were born long after Lucy passed away. There's Mariah, his second wife. She died 1883, 77 years, 6 months. And there's Paul himself. He died May 4th, 1882, 87 years, 4 months, 10 days. So it looks like Mariah probably outlasted just about everybody else. Unless they had other children that survived, which very well could be. There's a handsome stone from 1935, 90 years ago. Simeon Downs. There's his wife. She predeceased him by a long ways. She died in 1878. Another one from the mid-20th century, Louise M. Downs, 1856-1944. Percival Downs, 1876-1946. Classic example of two very different periods. You have Newell Perry, 1905 to 1988. So it's got that kind of pink granite going. And then right beside him, a burial from 1884. So 104 years before Newell Perry's here. You have Hattie W., daughter of Andrew J. and Catherine Baker, died April 8, 1884, age 13 years, 4 months, and 8 days. So it's quite a mix here of the ages, in some cases buried right next to each other. This is long ago fallen into the ground, but it's still kind of readable. Another Baker grave. Andrew died 1895, 59 years, 10 months, 3 days. Joseph Stubbs. Then you have the right-hand side here of the cemetery. Some more early 1900 burials. Again, that stone will hold up for a long, long time. You can see it's been repaired on the bottom, but still pretty unblemished. Not a lot of lichen or things like that growing on it. You have some of these really cool trees and stumps through here. Like I said, this was probably woods when it was first made in the early 1800s. You got the family obelisks, which were becoming popular in the more mid-1800s. You have William Sullivan, died May 12, 1842. His wife, Hannah Hanover Sullivan, who died in 1860. There's Hannah's grave, mother. And there's probably their son, Benjamin. Yep, it says Benjamin E. Sullivan, died December 11, 1881, age 40 years, 6 months, 12 days. Right above him, his brother, named Charles W. Sullivan, died November 20, 1857, age 21 years, 8 months. It says they were the sons of William and Hannah Sullivan, who of course are memorialized on the front there. It says William F., which could be another son. And then, you know, we have some more of these big family graves. Telltale from this one's all the way up to 2008. So we have some very recent burials here as well. This was a young boy, Alfred B. Smith. He died in 1935, so he would have been about 14 years old. This was probably his brother, if I had to guess, born 1924, only 3 years after Alfred. And this could be their dad, Philip John Smith, Maine Private Company F-103 Infantry, World War I. Thank you for your service, sir. Born March 25th, 1891, died February 1965. So if he was born in 1891, the boys were born in the 1920s. That would be just about right. That would put him at about 30 years old, give or take. Susanna, wife of David Sullivan, died May 17, 1852, age 75 years, 3 months. Likely her daughter. Next to her just says Lizzie. You can tell some of these are in very, very rough shape. I can't even really read them without, I'd have to really squint. But like I said, I did walk this before and record what I could find on Find a Grave. I can see that says died in 1844, age 78 years, 9 months. There's the footstone. There's a lone footstone by itself. Looks like Phoebe was a pretty common name. I know that we saw one at the beginning of this video. Phoebe, wife of Ezra Weldon. And there's Ezra. He died in 1888. She died in 1870. And that's spelled Weldon, W-H-E-L-D-E-N. And then we walk just a row back, and you have this obelisk that spells it Wealden. And back then, they were still kind of spelling things how they sounded. So I have to believe that in some ways the Wealdens are related to the Weldons, it being that close. These would be considered headstones, but they too just have initials. So you have SW and SSW, and that is a footstone in the middle. So it may have belonged to one of these and it fell over, so they just kind of repropped it up. And we walk along, we can see a few more older and some that aren't so old ones. This is Benjamin Nichols, who died in 1914, and his wife Anne Warren Nichols, who died in 1909. Another obelisk. George Nichols died 1869, age 79 years. Betsy died 1864, 72 years, 2 months, 1 day. And that brings us to the back of the cemetery. So there's the woods right there, and both sides are residential property on the other sides. But Bald Hill Cemetery, Winterport, Maine, USA. Little tour for you.